And we're back for another episode of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. Episode 14.
Coming in hot.
Back at it.
Spinning the wheels of steel. Coming into your ear holes.
This will be a Christmas present for everybody. This should be coming out shortly after Christmas. I think maybe the day after. So happy holidays to everybody who is having holidays this time of year.
Yes.
Yay.
Isekai'd into another world where there's no Christmas.
And if you're listening to this any other time of the year, welcome.
Thanks.
So if you've never heard us before, we're some friends who have been watching anime and talking about manga for a while, and we decided we want to do a podcast. So I'm your host, Isekai Sensei-Sama, aka Brad, and I'm joined by my good friends Kermit D, Grog, aka Andrew.
Hello ho.
And Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Yoroshiku ne.
So before we dive into everything today, let's go over a couple news items. So
It's popping on the news.
big one, they announced One Punch Man Season 3.
Oh, did they?
Now, everybody who knows about One Punch Man Season 2
Which we
will
do.
definitely be apprehensive about this. However, they have announced that the studio that will be adapting Season 3 is Madhouse.
Madhouse?
Yep.
Or Mappa.
Was it Mappa? I thought you said Mappa
Oh,
last week.
shit.
Well, you got to leave it in. I'm the sensei now.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mappa.
You said Mappa last week, and I'm like, Madhouse? That's way cooler.
Well, it's...
What if we could get Bones in there?
Anyways.
It is weird that Bones doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, stick around to the last segment of this podcast to hear why that might be a bad thing, even though it's a good studio. And one other piece of news, very, very unfortunate turn of events.
Joe Biden struck again.
Yeah.
This time where we live.
Unfortunately, the price of Viz has gone up by $1.
It's catching up to gas. Pretty soon you're not even going to be able to read manga anymore.
No. I wanted to do the bit where he says that and then he just goes, anyway, because like genuinely we've talked about it multiple times how good a value Viz is, and like $3 is like, yeah, sure, fine, easy.
I think I said...
I feel better.
yeah.
No, we did find
Take
we had
more
limits.
of my money, please.
We did have limits. Brad suggested a higher number, and I said, let's not be crazy.
Yeah.
But for $3, I'd go, yeah, hell yeah. I
I'm
feel better about it.
I'm the crazy one. I was like, I'd pay $7 for this. And Andrew's
more
like,
than 7 by
no, that's ridiculous.
Gonna have to wait a couple more years until that one. But for right now, $3, sitting pretty.
If they
Well worth
if they put all of the Viz catalog into that, I'd go $8.
Oh yeah, everything that the app
Yeah.
says it has that you
Yeah.
have to buy was also included. Yeah, $7 or $8 worth it. I can finally read V-Stars.
I don't know. Maybe I'd probably go even higher for that.
Oh my
10,
gosh.
I'd say.
Okay. I mean, you've got your
Maybe.
desire. We've had an entire episode segment about how much you want to pay to read your manga, so
Yeah.
I can dig it.
I have in my head a monthly budget of $50 for manga for subscriptions.
Okay.
Like-
which you can't normally do because all the other ones are such.
Right. And I refuse to do DLC for manga. Like, screw you
Now,
guys.
DLC, we already said it. It's loot boxes.
Yeah, well,
That's
same.
because you get into your... I mean, webcomics are like an entirely different beast.
But not even the
Buy
webcomics.
your
Like,
manga
actual
NFTs,
manga
Brad.
has been locked behind microtransactions.
Oh.
And I just hate it.
Maybe they're trying to incentivize people to go back to print.
Maybe they're incentivizing whales.
Speaking of being frustrated about paying for manga, shout out to Rena, our first commenter,
Oh my gosh.
who commented. Actually, she first commented on a heroin addiction episode. I believe she found us through Bato, and she went on to listen to other episodes and commented on our whatever that episode was about paying for manga, and left a comment. So thanks, Rena.
Thank
we appreciate
you.
it. She actually suggested a manhwa for Ben and I to check out, and that's what we're going to be doing next month. So
Looking forward to it.
just shows you the power that our audience holds over us
Yeah.
and does not exercise at all.
how much we're willing to jump through hoops.
Yeah. So I think we have one last thing before we jump into our discussion today.
Yes. Also, speaking of Viz, Shonen Jump recently put out 4 new series in the last month or so. 2 of which I don't care about and only read a little bit of and said, this isn't for me. But 2 that I was very interested in that I'd like to shortly talk about right now, which is Cypher Academy, of a manga about a school based around puzzle solving, based around the idea of how much in World War II and other wars that like code crackers really kind of turn the tide of the war, and that they're like, oh, World War III is fought with sticks and stones, World War IV will be fought with pencil and paper, which is like I'm a sucker for that one. It's got some so cool character stuff. Every puzzle is presented almost like a fight that needs to be figured out, and there's like a ebb and flow to the battle and them figuring things out. And a lot of these are based on Japanese word things, and I don't entirely understand them or could solve them myself, but wow, does it have that energy I love of being explained things and having somebody come out on top and other things going on. So Cypher Academy is a little bit more niche to what I enjoy, but I would say go give it a look, especially if you like a good puzzle fight.
So that's another series that we need Ben to read so he can explain it to us.
I don't even know. They're like, it's always like, well, this and this and this, and it's like all set up from the start. But it's like I don't know enough to put it through. But like I'm having a good time with it. It's got the energy I like. So there's Cypher Academy, and the one that it's only 2 chapters at the time of this recording that I am dying to see more of.
Oh, they're like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, some of these Cypher Academy and a couple of the other new ones have like 3 or 4 chapters. This one was like the one that got me to go look, and I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of new ones. I'll go check them all out. I finally remembered the name, which is Replicant 100. So this is one, I think it's set in England. It's hard to tell. The main character's name is very Japanese, but that's not important.
This is the one you were telling me about. It sounded really interesting.
So this is there is a mystery on a train where there's like a couple out on a date, and then just the woman is just snatched out of the window of this moving train, and you're like, what's going on? And then a boy shows up with a very large woman, like his nanny or something. She's very tall and very other things. And you're like, what's going on? And you hear a little story that then becomes the focal point, at least for now, of the story, is that like a doctor out in the hills was trying to create the perfect human, or like the most ideal human. I don't remember the exact verbiage, like very Frankenstein style, like stitching them together. And he could never quite get it right. And when he made the 100th one, he died. And all of them were left without purpose because their creator was gone. So they went out into the world trying to be the ideal human, which at least for right now for most of them is, oh, I'll just take the best parts of other humans, and I will build myself to be the most ideal human. So like the woman in the train, I guess spoiler alert, she gets snatched by one of them who has really good legs. She had really good eyes, so when they find her body, she has no eyes because the replicant has taken them. Side note of all this has big JoJo energy. It doesn't feel like JoJo, but it feels like I just heard a podcast of people talking about the book Araki wrote about writing manga, and it feels like a lot of the tenets are in there. It's got a little bit of like a weird true crime feel that has a little bit of that like, oh, the author learned about this, and like being really exciting from moment one, and characters and all that stuff. So the main thrust of the story then is that this massive woman with this little boy detective is a replicant. She is Replicant 100 because he is, and again, this is why it feels JoJo, because it feels like a lot of weird contrived things that you just go like, okay, I'm going to roll with this. It's cool. His family has a weird thing where they can age very old and appear young. So they are the most supple for the replicants to take their body parts because they're just so seemingly forever young outwardly. So a bunch of them got into his house and massacred his family. And he's like, oh man, how am I going to get out of this? And he goes, when I turn 16, my body is going to be the most perfect to harvest for you guys to be the ideal human. So if you want my body, you have to kill all replicants. So then the one just murders all of them and goes, hey, the last one that guy made, the 100th one, was the strongest one. It's me. I'm going to stick with you and make sure you're alive, and we're going to kill all these other replicants, and on your 16th birthday, I'm coming for that ass. Not literally that, but that's kind of the concept. So there's like this weird... There's this interesting dynamic of, like, she's trying to keep him alive, but also, like, I'm going to harvest your body in a couple years, kid. You are meat. And it makes it an interesting dynamic on top of, like, the general soul-searching you get of, like, what does it mean to be the ideal human? There was like a part in chapter 2 that really smacked me with that, and I was like, oh, I feel that. So it's only 2 chapters in. I'm having a good time with it. I'm going to be entirely honest. The thing that got me to go read it was somebody posted on a forum that I go to about there being a very Lady Dimitrescu person showing up in a new manga. And I'm like, I'm here for giant women. I'm going to go read that. And I admittedly got a lot more than that. So in a way that I could suggest it here on this podcast, and it's not my own little secret niche enjoyment. So I would say go check out Cypher one, or not Cypher, I'm mixing them up. Go check out Replicant 100 and go check out Cypher Academy. I believe both of them are at a low chapter count that even if you are not subscribed to Viz or Shonen Jump, you can still read everything for free. At the very least, the first 2 or 3 chapters. So now is the time to jump on, and if you get on it now and you don't want to subscribe, you could probably read its whole run if you keep up with it, every week or so. So
yeah, that Replicant 100 sounds pretty interesting. I think I'm probably going to check that out.
Go check it out. I'm having a real good time with it. Cypher Academy is very much like my little personal thing, but like I'm really curious to see where Replicant goes, because I think it's got some neat ideas.
The Cypher one, probably not so much my speed, but I might check it out just to give it a glance.
It's got some other cool things going on, but I don't want to spoil them. But I would say big top recommend to Replicant.
Cool. Check them out.
Have you guys ever listened to an anime that made you think? Watched an anime, I suppose, is the verb you would use.
Probably.
Taking it in.
Nothing comes to mind. Do you have an example?
I do have an example.
Whatever could it be?
It's the topic I proposed. So I was sitting around thinking about topics for the podcast, as I often do. And one thing that we've never quite talked about, at least directly, is anime that sparked a secondary interest or something outside of anime. Because anime tends to be very like memeified and insular, and like anime just references anime. But there's been a couple of anime where I felt like I had to know more. I needed more context.
So I'm going to assume that it's not the obvious answer of Japanese culture.
Kind of.
I mean, it can kind of be, I feel like, but the more specified than the normal fare that I think is within arm's reach. I think that's what he's getting at, Ben?
Yeah, when I proposed this, I had in mind Ghost in the Shell standalone complex.
Okay.
Which I think is a pretty well-remembered anime. I mean, like,
I hope so.
People who watched it seemed to like it. It was on
I enjoyed it.
Adult Swim back in the day. And
Fun fact, I've never actually watched the entire movie.
Likewise.
Oh, that's a shame.
I've never seen any of it.
I am well aware that it is good and it should be watched by everyone. I just have never committed to it.
Well, and I think that's the weird thing is like Ghost in the Shell, the movie, probably got me to read Neuromancer.
Okay.
So that's our bridge.
That's my cyberpunk entry point. Like Akira and Ghost in the Shell are probably where I started getting into cyberpunk stuff. And that's what I thought I was going to get when I went into Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. But when I went into Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, I started to notice that so many of those episodes rely heavily on examining social issues and politics. And there's a very Japanese flavor to the political struggles and the social movements. And that's, I don't know if they reference it specifically, but like that prompted me to look into a few things that eventually led me to realize that there were big student protests, that Japan, America's, base that we needed to defend against communism was actually like dabbling in communism.
Okay.
There was
So Japanese culture, but like for real, and not like the superficial kind.
Very specifically
modern or semi-modern. The time that anime doesn't get made about.
Right.
Yeah, like very specifically, how does Japan see itself? Is something that a lot of anime don't really tackle. Especially like, how does Japan see itself in relation to the West?
In a way that is not through the lens of anime trappings.
But because Ghost in the Shell standalone complex often dealt with like international issues, and it was supposed to be based on, it's post World War III. There's an American empire now, but like that in itself is kind of telling. of how they view like America just being one step away from just dropping the pretense and calling it what it is.
Yeah.
And I liked that. I think the one line, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like Japan and America renegotiating some key defense treaty. And it was, they viewed it as Japan and America had a relationship in the Asian sphere of influence where Japan was a shield and America was a sword.
Yeah, because there was the whole thing after World War II where Japan was, because they lost, the Allies put stipulations on them that they were not allowed to build an army, but they were allowed to have a force to defend themselves with.
Some sort of defense force.
So you get the Japanese Self-Defense Force, JSDF, which gets referenced in lots of different things.
And then in place of that, we also absorbed all the responsibility for defending them.
Right.
From, like, if a preemptive attack needed to be launched to secure Japan's borders, we would have to launch that. And Japan has always bristled against that. And also, a lot of the Japanese war criminals got away with it because, we needed them to fight against communists, and they hated communists, and B, Americans just weren't aware of them. they had weird names that we couldn't remember, so we just kind of
about as far away could be,
Yeah.
admittedly.
I can pronounce the German names.
In an era well before the internet and mass communication on a meaningful scale for civilian populations.
Yeah, and I won't say this is the first time I ever thought about how another country saw itself in relation to America, or thought about how America looked from another nation's perspective. But Japan is kind of mysterious in that stuff. There's not a lot of books written about very specifically what happened in Japan outside of its pop culture.
Yeah.
It's like Europe I'm very familiar with. I know about if a protest happens in France, I see it on the news. If a protest happens in Japan, I see it in like the corner of a newspaper maybe. And so that anime just dealt with so many of those explicitly like international politicking issues, but also cultural issues of like collectivism versus individuality, especially with the cyberpunk thing. That's all cyberpunk is about, is like how networked should we be? Should you have the privacy of your own mind? I remember them saying kind of problematically these days that when you ran in like airplane mode, because it's your brain, they would call it autistic mode.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I don't think they would translate it that way today. I don't know if that was the actual Japanese word. I actually watched this one dubbed. But it was an interesting way to think of like how they might see not being totally networked all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. That one just gave me so many launching points of all the stuff I've looked into, a bunch of stuff I've talked about on this podcast. And I could think of a ton of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of wondering if you guys had anything similar, if you had ever gone outside of the anime bubble and researched something or looked into a skill or looked into, I remember iShield 2021, looked into a sport. Or
2021.
Not 2021.
That's the sequel.
Yeah.
That's the sequel when his kid starts playing that he inevitably has because time marches forward like that. That'd be cool, though, actually. Ooh, okay.
This is an interesting topic for me because when I think about the different, all of the different media that I consume, it seems like the only thing that it becomes a bridge for is other media to consume.
I mean, that's your circles.
Yeah. It's like
Isekai isn't really known for, hey, here's some new ideas.
I think, well, it's not just Isekai.
I guess you could have learned. I mean, there's things to learn stuff from.
I think part of the issue is that when I am not consuming manga, I spend a lot of my time just, surfing the internet. I go on Reddit all the time. Before Reddit, throwback, Stumble Upon. Anybody remember that?
Was that like a plugin?
Vaguely.
The browser extension. You would literally just keep pressing the button. It would take you to a random website that someone had.
I do remember that. You could kind of configure your interests and like thumbs up, thumbs down.
It was basically Reddit before Reddit. Although I think Reddit was a thing at the time. But so like I consume information a lot already. And so a lot of the times when I come across something interesting like that in a manga or an anime or whatever, I already have some sort of basis.
Brett already
of information
knows
for that.
everything. He's so smart and handsome.
I know a little bit about most things.
I'd also be lying if I said that it's like Dragon Ball Z didn't play a role in me ever getting into martial arts.
Well, yeah, I think
And
that is a
Yeah.
topic to go over later, Ben, because that is
Yeah.
definitely something I'd want to ask you about. So,
Check out our Origins episode.
but it's, I guess, Brad, for you, it's like what? Because you're describing it's like, oh, I have this low level informational level of everything, so when I come across it, I know it. I think Ben's getting at it's like what pulls you, like what's that, like you get this and you're like, oh man, I need more of this. I need to know more. Not just like, oh, that's neat, but like, oh hey, like there's it gets like a hook in you.
I had a very low level information about Japanese history from, like World War II onward. I knew a little bit about that. My grandfather fought in the Pacific Theater.
Oh.
But I had never done a deep dive into what the struggles were within Japan. Because one of the things that always comes out about Japan is that they're this collectivist, uniform society that they all fall in line and they all, work for the Zaibatsu for their entire lives.
That's what they want you to believe.
Well, and to some extent that is sort of something they export, whether intentionally or not, and it's really not true. They do have political conflict. It just doesn't play out quite as like loud and in the streets as ours, but sometimes it does.
Maybe they should ask Shinzo Abe about that.
Well, that's a too soon.
It's a bit of a kettle of fish.
Yeah. But that is another thing where it's like he had no security.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's like, what the heck was that?
in America, obviously somebody's going to take a shot at you.
It's in our history for hundreds of years.
But no, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex was one of the first animes I saw where it presented Japan as a complicated society with political factions and varying interests. And I'm always interested in that because that stuff in anime, I feel like they like to sweep it under the rug sometimes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes any hint of conflict is taken out, and it's either taken out because they don't think people will get it. If you're trying to market something, I know we've talked about this early on, anime was censored and changed and made less Japanese. And now I think if you are making an anime, it's like, one, a lot of these are made for 14-year-olds who probably also, even though they're Japanese, don't have an in-depth knowledge of Japanese political struggles over the years. And two, they do think about a global audience, and we do have translators and stuff. And so, yeah, if you write a manga that's like deeply about the Japanese political structures in the 60s, it's like, who's going to read that?
Me. I want to know about that. Like it's this, I mean, I guess I'll bring mine on a little bit and explore this concept some more of like the one big one for me was reading, and I've talked about it here, Golden Kamuy, and going like, Japan fought a war with Russia, and I'm learning about Japan, like there's this entire island of natives, and it's like, well, how does the Russian population that's nearby work, and this war that happened, and the afterwards, and all of this, and it's just like, how much none of that up to World War II, and even kind of after, is in anything.
Well, and that's another thing.
And I found it fascinating that this country, that it makes all this other media that I love, that is constantly hearkening back to its history, has this massive section in it that they just don't ever reference ever.
Like, I think in our pop culture that we export as Americans, you know about Native Americans. You probably don't know.
The Japanese know about Native Americans.
You
and
probably
did before.
don't know much about them, and what you know is probably wrong. But
You're aware.
yeah, you are aware that they existed. Whereas, like the Ainu people,
I didn't know about that until I freaking read Golden Kamuy, and I was like,
yeah,
I didn't know there was any natives on the island.
yeah, and then you do a deep dive into it, and you find out that
Yeah.
they're this tribe that lives in both Japan and Russia.
Yeah,
and
and just thinking about like there was a war. How did that go for the Russians that had emigrated to Japan and this other island and the other way around. And it's just this fascinating time. And like that time period of like, I guess this is the turn of the century into the 1900s. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get my years wrong.
Yeah.
Like it's post-American Civil War, but pre-World War One.
Yeah.
Like that zone, it's like just right after cowboy times that may or may not have actually happened.
Well, and it was especially shocking because that was right after, I mean, on a global timescale, that was right after Japan had opened up.
Yeah.
And then within a couple of decades, they're beating a European nation.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like that is like that time period, just, I don't know what draws me to it, but it's like, it's one of my favorite where it's like, hey, communications, like we have electricity, communication is getting more. We've got like actual guns, but they're not like full on like machine gunny bits all the time. Like there's a lot more organization, and like I'm a sucker for all the uniforms at that time because they're so like fancy and colorful. And it's just weird that there's just this giant dark spot where it's just like there's nothing ever based on any of that.
I think
You're just going to hear about ninja and samurai for the umpteenth time.
I think it makes sense to be sort of attracted to that time period because I think what you get is sort of similar to how people are sort of really into like Civil War and stuff, because it wasn't so long ago that you can't sort of put yourself in it.
Yeah.
But it's also long enough ago that it's still very different.
I mean, I could make the argument that, at least for me, that the 60s are that, because things that are set in a sort of stylized 60s is like, here is this weird time that was within reach, but not from, it is a kind of mythic time.
I think the
for
difference,
me, who was definitely not alive anywhere near it.
I think the difference to like the 60s is like, oh, they had television, you know, like that was a thing. Maybe not everybody had it. It was black and white or whatever, but it still existed.
That person's daily life would not be vastly different from yours.
Right.
But it's still like, I don't know, like when you were saying earlier, Ben, of like seeing a Japanese like political thriller in the 60s, it's like the same thing of like going back and like I was watching old clips from like original Sentai stuff, and it's like, this is incredible. It is of an era, and it's like you can only kind of get that stuff, it feels like, when it was just made at the time and you're going back to it, and they don't seem to revisit it.
Well, and this is, I'm sure, going to shock listeners of the podcast, but I love when I know a thing that a lot of other people don't know, and
What a surprise!
and I get to tell them about that.
I do love learning,
and I love like figuring out. So like the fact that we're all in this anime community, and I said this back in our origin stories, back when me and my friends were all into Dragon Ball Z, but it hadn't really come over here fully yet. I loved finding out something new and showing it to them. And I kind of get that same vibe when I look into this stuff, because it's like you said, it bursts your bubble that Japan is this big homogenous culture when you find out there's a significant ethnic minority that speaks an entirely different language. And they were just there for a long time, and that influences so much of what you see, because they do use Ainu like clothing, and often a hunter will be portrayed, especially if it's like set in the olden times, somewhat like an Ainu hunter, and that it's just it makes pieces fall together. It's like all this subtext that
it's
were
all this
unaware
missing
of.
pieces, because it's the weirdness is like, this is this thing where I've taken in so much quote unquote Japanese culture, but there's this part where we have more, like, continually more history than all the history they talk about, because we're getting more and closer to modern day in the way of storing information and all that, and there's just this massive blank spot, even though I feel like I have so much information where it's just like I don't actually at all.
Well, and
I have just what was exported,
it's in some ways, Japan has the same problem that all cultures have, is that there is a dominant subculture, and the dominant subculture is the one that's closest to the power that can get things made and get things done. And so that's why a Kansai dialect makes you a hick, but a Tokyo Japanese is the real Japanese. And that's why we all focus on the same Warring States era and the Meiji Restoration. These are comfortable political topics, but something like Golden Kamuy is a rare one.
Is very rare because it is steeped in both the war and very specifically the Ainu. A large portion of the book is specifically learning Ainu language and culture.
Yeah.
And then later on you'll learn the different tribes. Like, it is explicit in its purpose in communicating that. And I feel like I got a greater appreciation for that stuff talking to you, Ben, of understanding more of this, like, place in history along everything, of this kind of stack of dominoes that kind of goes around for it.
Yeah, and it's sort of the same thing when you get maybe, I think Samurai Champloo might be another example of one that made me realize that people from Okinawa were not considered Japanese, or in some cases might still not be really considered Japanese.
Geez, I didn't know that.
Like, all the people from the Ryushu Islands are more recent additions to Japan. Like, mainland Japan conquered them at one point.
Did they conquer them before or after we took in Hawaii and Alaska?
Oh, before.
I had a feeling.
Yeah.
And they're still iffy about it.
Yeah, and they were oppressed. Those people have not necessarily thought of themselves as Japanese for very long. I mean, and how many different subcultures are there within America that don't really feel a part of the dominant subculture?
You probably want to talk to the Native Hawaiians.
True.
Yeah, Hawaii is a good example. And that is where my mind kind of goes. I'm sure there are less politically heavy angles.
Well, and that's the direction that I'm trying
Yeah.
Here you go,
to,
Brad.
to
We've
get
been
into.
dominating this in like
Yeah.
heavy talk about history and culture and
Because
you know, blind spots and things. And what's your example, Brad? You want me to let me ease you into it with a gag one. You know, watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure got me listening to some old bands and albums that I had not listened to before.
I mean,
And I already loved Roundabout by Yes, but now I extra love Roundabout by Yes.
that's a really great example of something that could do that.
It didn't do it as heavily, and it did help that one blessing from a much earlier thing that Ben made about iShield 21. I was very lucky that I already knew about football before reading iShield 21. So anytime they had this big new reveal of like, you kick the ball, I was like, yeah, it's football, dummies. You can throw it and somebody catches it? Wow. Oh, you have different plays. It's like, yes.
I'll throw this out there. I did not. My mom is going to kill me if she ever hears this, because my mom loves volleyball, played volleyball like well into her adult years. Hi,
Ben's mom.
I knew nothing about volleyball till I watched Haikyuu. Only once I watched Haikyuu did I realize, like, oh, there's like screens and plays and
Yeah, that's why I love sports, because
Yeah.
I mean, iShield, I kind of knew it. Not that I was like deep into football, but I love those because it's that sense of learning other facts while I'm taking this in. It's one of the reasons I liked early Dr. Stone. It's just like I just like learning information.
That
You
was
just took it?
the example I was.
Oh
gonna
God,
use.
here, Brad, you can get into it then, Brad. Have it. Go.
take
Here.
Dr. Stone.
Well, I was gonna bring that up as like that was one where as we were watching it and they were going through what was tantamount to real science that he was doing, and those things would come up and it would make sense, and you would go, oh, you know, because this is how you make electricity, or this is how the electroplating process works, or this is how you generate or how you make
Like a battery.
sulfuric acid or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now, for me, as we were watching that, as I said, I already knew a lot of that stuff. And so it was interesting to watch and go, oh, yeah, they're getting that right. Or, oh, they're really stretching this part. Like, I on the verge of that's not possible kind of stuff.
But give me your bridge one. Give me your not. Oh yes, I am the scholar. I already knew about this. Give me your. You got a taste and you're like, what is that? I need more of whatever that is.
That's what I'm saying.
Have you deep dived into kobolds because of your fascination with these?
No, see,
guys?
well, part of the problem now is that because I have both of you, is that
We have
I'll
other
just tell you where the
hobbies.
kobolds came
especially Ben, I'm just like, hey, here's an interesting thing. Ben, what is this about? And you just go off on it.
I don't know. I think you have had stuff. We've talked a little bit about like Comey can't communicate, and
There's definitely things that
Yeah.
interest me, and I go, you know, this is interesting.
there's a little
there
something
But
might-
do you
more.
ever
But
does it
there's
ever
not-
lead
there's
you
not
with
really-
a guided thing that you exit the work and go looking for more just general
Yeah, I
information
don't-
about the topic?
Rakugo.
I can't really.
Rakugo is up there, yeah. I looked into it
that's
once we
another
were
one.
reading Akane Banashi into Rakugo, even before that. And admittedly, a lot of these are Japanese-centric, but this is Japanese-centric media, like learning about shoot, what is it called? Like kabuki theater. It's like, here's this really weird specific thing that I see referenced all the time in this. Let me go find out, like, what is this? Why do I keep seeing this? Like,
You sent me a clip of
Yeah,
a Canadian
no.
man doing Rakugo.
Honestly,
it made
the
he's not great,
Kanabanashi,
but
that's probably
it made stuff make more sense. And
Yeah.
it's like I gained. That's one where it kind of fed into itself, and I guess to an extent, I had the same with Golden Kamuy, where it's like this was about something that. It wasn't giving me all the information, but very clearly was working from a place of knowing it. And I'm like, I need to know more about this. I went out and learned more. In Kane Banashi case, like we found a freaking English Rakugo.
I guess that one
and
didn't.
then I came back, and because I had experienced it personally through a YouTube video, I had a better understanding about what was going on.
Yeah, I would say that one's probably the closest that I really get to like going out and seeking additional information to more than just a superficial degree, because that was one where, you know, I read the first, you know, 1 or 2 chapters and it was like, this is really interesting, but as a visual, you know, just static manga, it doesn't really portray what Rakugo really is. And so
Because it can't.
You
It's a
can't,
manga.
you can't draw a
should. It's
picture of a
static.
performance art.
Right.
Yeah.
And so go out, you know, watch a couple different YouTube videos. I watched some like in actual Japanese with some subtitles. I watched some English speakers do it, and got a good idea of like what was going on. Now, what I didn't do, and I think this is sort of where we differ in a lot of this.
My
is
rabbit
that I
holes
didn't,
go deeper.
Yeah, I didn't go, okay, now that I've watched this, I need to know how the structure of the Zenbayashi
What's the
works
deep lore of the Rakugo?
Yeah, but
Right,
that
right.
doesn't happen for everything. This was just
Yeah.
like I needed enough of the taste, but you know, for me, it was like, well, what the heck was the freaking Russo-Japanese War? I need to know this, and the way that they, you know, mobilized and what it meant culturally for them, and why it's erased from history, and like all this. It's context. It's the desire for more context in a period that I'm just generally interested. But I think that's also a little difference between the three of us. Is Ben and I have a general interest in historical things, and you don't.
That's
Well, and I'll also say it didn't happen all at once. It's not
No.
like I watched Ghost in the Shell standalone complex and then I was like, I need to know everything about Japan from 1945 to 2001. It just was like it put a seed in my brain.
It's a spark for the journey.
That there was more to it than this. And so sometimes I'd see a book that caught my eye and I was like, you know what, I'm going to read that.
Yeah. I think I've always sort of had the, I don't know if this is the right word, but like the jack of all trades kind of thing.
I'm
where it's
getting
like,
that vibe from you.
Yeah, like I like to get a little bit of information about topics so that I can like have a conversation about it, but I'm not necessarily an expert on it. And when I think about things that I am an expert on, Isekai.
You did have me read an Isekai where somebody gets the jack of all trades trait.
The thing about
Isekai's
that,
even I can't believe I've learned another thing. Like I meant that I didn't already know it to an extent, but another thing is clicked into place of like, well, of course he loves Isekai. He likes getting mastery of all things, even if he doesn't. Like, there's no specialization. It's the most just.
yeah. But the thing is, like when I think about, you know, how deep I've gotten to Isekai, it's not that I went out and sought out information about Isekai. I just read a whole bunch of Isekai.
You just kept eating
Right.
the
That
bread.
was
There was
your-
nothing you
yeah.
ate that made you go, I'm going to eat something else. You just said, I need to eat more of this, and you became the expert on Isekai.
So that was more like, you know, like doing archaeology rather than writing a research paper.
You know what? I will even give you that tangentially, your love of Isekai introduced you to a whole sphere of Korean and Chinese comics, like web comics that you would not have it was like led to a web comic renaissance.
Which is
almost.
slowly making you osmosis new things. You're in a new pool of water, and you get to osmosis new.
I would wager
Yeah.
you know more about
Wow.
Korean culture from those comics than you probably would have
Yes.
just with the passive
yes.
consumption.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from there's a couple different series that I was reading that I actually there haven't been updates in a while that were explicitly set in Korea. They were not isekais, and so that was like getting a lot of sort of like the cultural knowledge
gaining
of that.
new interests.
And that was always interesting because, you know, reading those, I already had sort of a baseline for Japanese culture. And so looking at the differences between those things, and the similarities. Like there's so many things that are similar, but then there's certain things that are so different. Korea tends to have a more Western bent in certain areas, like more Americanized.
I was going to
Brad,
say
this is it. This is your space. Keep talking.
Yeah.
This is fascinating.
I can't think of any, details off the top of my head.
You just
here.
were talking about one. Keep talking about it. I know I just interjected. This was terrible, and I just did it again, and it's now comedy.
Well, when I talk about like the Americanization of certain aspects, it's like the way that they. God, I'm just blanking on
just
examples
for
right
this
now.
Really delicious looking menu, and now you're just like you can't.
I don't know if this is
Forgot
right
the
to
recipe.
say, but it feels to me almost like Korean capitalism or consumerism is closer to American.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And
what little I know, what
this
little
is-
that means to agree in this situation.
This sort of goes to what you were talking about before, where Japan wants to give everyone the idea of homogeny, even if they don't
And
really
samurai
have it. Whereas
and all this stuff, which is just not true.
Whereas South Korea, while they have a lot of similarities, they don't go heavy on that. They do tend to
They have a little
favor
bit more
individualism
individualism,
like America.
Yeah.
And so you get a lot of those Americanisms because of that. Again, I'm blanking on good examples.
We fought a war,
unfortunately, but
in that country instead of towards it.
yeah, I mean, and honestly, as far as like military stuff is concerned, we have a similar relationship with South Korea as we do with Japan, but it came about in a significantly different way, and so it gets treated a
We
lot
didn't
differently.
super explode them. We only regular exploded them.
Well, and we regular exploded them for their own good. I mean,
verbal air quotes, audio air
Yeah.
quotes.
Yeah, he is
Big
making air
honkin'-
quotes, but
whereas
Honkin' audio air quotes on that one. I saw the look on his face and was like, "This needs to be communicated for people that cannot see that face."
whereas our super exploding of Japan was definitely not for their own good. Although some people might want to try to argue
I
that.
mean, none of it was for their own good. But we did have similar nation-building experiments in Japan and Korea, but they differed in big ways. And Korea probably differs the biggest in that it has land borders.
Yeah.
And
It's not an island.
yeah, it doesn't get to be off by itself.
So going all over this stuff, I think what I'm looking at here is that instead of the way that you guys go about things, where you get this little bug of interest and then you go and seek out other forms of information about that thing, be it Japanese-Russian war or the student protests or whatever those things, those various things that get into your head. When I get that bug, I'm not going out and seeking different sources of information. I'm diving into the source of information that I was already in.
If I may engage in one of our famous analogies, you are like a filter feeding whale who was like, the water around this area is very filling.
Not a lot of krill.
I'm going to swim around this area a little more and filter feed it. And the little information tidbits will eventually add up
into things that I can't remember to tell my friends on a podcast.
Whereas you guys are like dolphins and you can chase after the shiny things.
Yes,
exactly.
we can make a choice with our giant dolphin brains.
I will
And
ignore the fact
meat
that
per square
I'm
inch whale
also
brain.
definitely the heaviest of the three of us, so we'll move past that.
Whales are sleek and noble creatures.
You need to play the weight card here, bud.
Well, Ben always talks about that, so I feel the need to point it
I always
out.
talk about that I'm fat. I want to clarify.
He did, but he implied in a way that we were insulting him. So that's why I'm taking umbrage with it.
I have no problem with my weight.
I have a problem with mine, but I'm not doing much about it.
Okay, here's a last little, as I feel like we're coming to the end of the segment. Let me spin this 180. So we talked about things that we saw them in anime and manga, and then we were curious and we went to go research them. What's something that you're deep into that you know a lot or that you've researched into that you would love to see in a manga or anime?
That's a really good question. I wish I wasn't so off this week.
I have an answer.
You did almost die earlier this week. You get a pass.
Maybe I almost
I'm still
died.
grilling you and roasting you, but you do get a little bit of a pass. What do you got, Ben?
So I haven't read it. I know it exists, but every time I walk past that Vinland Saga manga,
Yeah, you got your weird Viking thing.
yeah, I'm also into like Old Norse and the Poetic Eddas and all of that. So that's another weird like culture I just clicked with me. I dove into.
I've heard it's good, and I that's one of those ones where it's like I say to myself, I want to watch that. I wonder when that will happen.
That's been kind of my thing, but like I've looked at it. I wanted to read the manga because I'm more of a manga person, and it looks so good. And every time I walk past it, I just see how many there are, and like how expensive it is. And I haven't done it yet, but I probably will pull the trigger on that at some point because I'm very interested to see how they do it. I understand it's done pretty well.
Maybe one of these slower seasons we'll check out the first season.
Yeah, I'd be up for that.
That could definitely go on the list of just in case. In case of fire, break glass. Okay, so I have an answer.
You have an answer, Brad.
It's sort of unfortunate.
It's a story about a man who reads a lot of isekai. Okay, stay with me.
So
in the hundreds, he reads hundreds of them.
I thought about the one thing that I actually really get into, and I sort of just, I don't know if deep dive would be the right word, but something that like I will
it's something
watch.
That you are like passionate about. That anytime this particular topic comes up, you're like, I want to absorb that information in particular.
Yeah, like I will sit there and watch 15, 30-minute long YouTube videos on space stuff. So, when all the cool stuff they're doing with the James Webb Telescope and the way that neutron stars work and turn into magnetars. And I was watching a video last night about strange matter, which is made out of strange quarks, which could be the most stable form of matter and might turn other matter into strange matter. And so these are the kind of things that I just like when I see that information, I just need to absorb it.
Can PBS Eons get a manga or anime adaptation?
I mean,
make something about space that's like cells at work. It's just anthropomorphize these concepts and express them through funny segments with cute anime girls.
Yeah, the stuff about like
all dressed up in their uniforms.
How did the universe start? Is the Big Bang the answer, or are we just inside a massive black hole and we're so far inside the event horizon that you can't even tell? How does quantum fluctuations bring about the existence of matter that we are? Like, how do we actually exist? Like all those kind of things. And I think like
anime Carl Sagan?
Could you really turn that into entertainment?
Dr. Stone meets The Martian, kind of.
Yeah.
Like you could, if somebody had to like go and solve those issues in space. Like you could do like a
Dr.
like
Stone in space, which I think is just Dr. Stone later if we ever get there.
Well, like hard sci-fi, like Isaac Asimov and all those people, and even more recently with that one everybody loves, The Expanse. Mm-hmm. Like those stories are super science heavy. They're very realistic, but they also find a way to get some sort of human characters and a plot in there.
Yeah.
You could, they could do that with an anime.
Here's the problem. I don't like watching TV shows anymore.
Yeah, no, but if it was an anime.
Right. If it was an anime or an isekai manga.
It's possible.
If we could get
there's that isekai you described where they get like reincarnated as like the AI on a starship.
Yeah, that's very much not scientific.
Bummer.
It's awesome.
The one where they got reincarnated as an anime AI on a spaceship wasn't realistic.
AI.
An animation intelligence.
I mean, that's just me now and for Western cartoons almost.
Okay, so homework for our audience. Please let me know if you know of a very physics-based manga or anime or manhwa. That's fine too.
Sci-fi hard science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Help me out here.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to make mine quick. So we're getting in the segment. But this is a confluence of many things, both in my general life and my love of particular things in anime and other things that I would love to see if it was done properly. I would love an anime about roller derby.
Oh, yeah.
That is...
I'm surprised that doesn't exist.
That is... I don't think there's roller derby in Japan. I don't think that's a thing they have.
think
Now I'm really curious to go Google that.
like air gear is the closest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am the head NSO or non-skating official for my local league.
I don't think that's come up on this podcast.
I don't think it has. That's why I was very excited to talk about it, because it's something new I could talk about that I know about.
It's an amazing reveal.
And help officiate all over the area where we live for a bunch of teams, and like I think a not like super souped up version. Like I don't want like crazy like guns and stuff. But I would like. I feel like it's there. Like it's a sports anime. At least in the West, in America, like there are male leagues or intergender leagues, but for the most part, derby is a female sport. Like. Freaking Japan's good at making a bunch of cute anime girls. They're getting better at making them tough and muscly. They literally derby is like the most like, again, not that Japan is always or anime is always the best about it, but this is like literally you need the entire gamut of human forms to play derby. You need small people, you need tall people, you need wide people, you need thin people. Like there is a space for everyone. And like to put that into an anime where you can get like freaking like One Piece style, like this one's a giant, this one's a small one. They've got really long arms, and just like have that on skates with cool outfits.
Wasn't
like
there...
That sounds great.
There was...
Battle Angel Alita has something
What?
like
yeah.
Battle Angel Alita has a sport like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not the whole thing, but I'm thinking
it's-
of the movie.
Yeah.
There was a specific sequence where they were doing that.
They call it Battle Ball or something.
Yeah.
That were like just like, and I know
It's
like,
more of a racetrack kind of
it's
thing.
not my,
But yeah.
it's not. I can live a little bit more of the lines of like the thing I get frustrated anytime like pro wrestling is displayed in a cartoon or literally anywhere where they treat it like an actual like this is an actual fight and you're gonna get beat up, and I'm so tired of that and I hate it.
Well,
but
this
like
is
with
also
roller derby, it's
sci-fi,
like
so...
pull some of the like the old roller derby that was a work that wasn't real and like kind of that extra showiness in it. Like that's the fun of freaking roller derby. My name on this podcast is my roller derby name. My roller derby friends call me Kermit. Like there's like it's still got some of that kind of showy, everybody dresses up, like it's a big thing, and I think anime would have a lot of fun with that concept.
It would be a really good fit.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting.
No joke whatsoever. The closest they have gotten, and I would not want an attempt like this, but like genuinely I was like, this is actually fairly similar to roller derby in ways, was Keijo, which was a quote-unquote sports very horny thing about women in bikinis on like islands on the water having to knock each other off with their butts and boobs. But genuinely, like they're like the areas of legal contact point in roller derby, it's kind of similar. You got to hip check people off the thing, and it's like it reminded me of it a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, but like that's not roller derby, but like the pieces are there, is what I'm saying. You just got to make them cool and tough. Does anybody else have any other major things they want to talk about? I feel like
Let's move on.
we've kind of captured that. So I guess listeners, if there's something of an anime or manga that you watch that got you to learn another thing that's kind of outside the general bounds of manga or anime, share it with us. We'd love to hear it.
So I wasn't entirely honest. There is something that while I didn't... I wouldn't say I researched at all. There was something that I was not into at all. And manga that I was reading got me really, really into it and made me spread out into other mediums. And that would be romance stuff.
Romance stuff.
So the way that this started was I was getting into isekai and, loving everything about it. And then I find there is this sort of subgenre of isekai, and I've talked about this a little before, which is the villainous revenge or reincarnation or whatever, these stories where somebody goes into the body of a villainous in the story, and there's the event where the prince is gonna like annul their engagement, and they're gonna be like thrown out and thrown in a monastery or whatever, so they have to like do whatever crazy wacky thing, or they'll get reincarnated as that person as a child, and they have to make sure that they don't meet the bad end when they grow up, and there's all this stuff. I have never ever been into romance stuff, and I cannot stress that enough. Never in my entire 33 years on this planet had I ever been like, oh yeah, romantic stuff, that's cool. And for whatever reason, this isekai bridge into this just sent me down this rabbit hole. And so, you start with the isekai villainous stuff, but then from there you get the non-isekai villainous stuff. And then from there you get into the villainous manhwa. And then from there you get into the not villainous manhwa that's literally just romance stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And before I knew it, I'm reading completely romance-only manhwa and going, how did I get here?
Didn't you also read, what the heck is it called? Ore Monogatari or something?
Yeah,
Watched
and
it?
that's one of those things
With
that
the big
stems
guy who looks
from
like
that.
he's from Ultimate Muscle.
Now, I will say, in terms of that, the comedy of that is very important. There are the only like straight up romance stuff that I watch is sort of like the short story kind of ones. The more long form, just straight up romance, I don't like to watch that. I do read a couple manhwa that are just sort of straight up romance. But for some reason, the anime doesn't really grab me as much. But
you need it in page by page that you can turn it
Yeah.
like a romance novel.
yeah, I'm not sure what exactly it is, and especially because now I think like, Ben, you like Twilight. And I think about that, and I go, "No, that sounds awful."
Maybe heavy statement of like.
It's no, I unironically like
Okay,
Twilight.
okay,
It started
I'm
ironic
sorry.
and it became genuine.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
I probably
happens.
don't like it for the reasons you're supposed to like it. I do. It reminds me so much of being in high school, particularly me being in high school in 2003 to
Being an
2006.
edgelord.
Yeah, exactly.
Moody teenager.
No, I kind of get it because I mentioned this on Words About Books, and I forgot to mention that I was hosting Heroin Addiction on that episode. But I think as I was growing up, I would have gotten into romance had I been born a girl and like had permission. But because like for toxic masculinity reasons, I don't think I did. But like when I was 10, I really liked Sailor Moon. And I've always liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Charmed, and like I got very invested when like Angel lost his soul in Buffy, and she had to like get his soul back, but then he died. Spoilers, I guess. And
For the entirety of the Angel series,
yeah, I mean, I guess the fact that there's an Angel series kind of spoils that. But yeah, I had little bits where I would start to get into like the soap opera-y stuff. And then, or like something like Power Rangers would have like all these like complicated romances where like, oh, Tommy betrayed Kimberly and blah, 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 blah. And like, even as a kid, I got super into that stuff, but I would always like, that's not why I like it. I like it because of the Kung Fu. That really, really good Kung Fu that Power Rangers is famous for. But yeah, recently doing a book podcast and then doing this kind of comic podcast, I have just through like, what's popular these days and having to read that because that's what people want to hear about. I'm having like a romance renaissance where it's like I'm older now. I'm
A romanescence?
a romanescence. But yeah, I'm old enough. I'm confident enough in my masculinity to not care if people see me reading romance stuff, and I'm willing to admit like I do genuinely like the genre.
I don't think I've ever really had at least I haven't thought about the sort of the toxic masculinity aspect of that.
I don't think I ever consciously thought it either, but that's definitely
it's like the
what
general
it
like
was.
goading from society of like this
Yeah.
isn't for you. You're destined for the blue aisle. Go there and look at go look at Spider-Man.
What I can say is that while I still don't really like, I think about like, oh, the Hallmark movie channel.
No,
or
it's
whatever,
not. It's not like you have to
soap
go like, oh, I love
operas or-
romances, so you have to like
No,
all
right,
of
right,
them, even the
yeah.
really schmaltzy ones. Like I don't think
those are. I'm still like, I don't like that.
it needs to be close enough to what
Yeah.
brought you to the dance.
It's
But-
romance plus drama, which like equals excitement.
Right.
Yeah.
And but that is the thing is the way that I did grow is that I used to be really against it. It would be like when something like that, like a soap opera, somebody's
Yeah.
like watching a soap opera. It's like, why are you that's so stupid. Like how could now
great.
I'm much more ready to accept other people's like of those things.
You have to be eased into it because
Yeah.
those are the kinds of things like you can't see it over somebody's shoulder like a big superhero movie and understand immediately why it's exciting.
Right.
You have to know that so and so was the best friend of so and so, but then they betrayed them.
But also sometimes you need like a little like a mix in that's like, okay, here's half this drink is the thing that I like, and then this other half of this drink is this romance stuff which is new to me, and that's kind of how you get into it. So
Yeah.
I have my own example of that. But first, before we get there, I wanted to make this joke earlier. Brad, you describing your situation where you got into manhwa because your regular isekai site was down was very... have either of you ever seen Gravity Falls?
Yes.
There's a really good C-plot where Grunkle Stan sits down, he's an old man, to watch television, and he can't find the remote, and they're playing old-timey romance things, and he's like, I don't want to get up, this sucks, but I guess I'm stuck here now.
And then he's crying.
And then by the end of the episode, when you cut back to him, he's crying and he's so invested, and like that's what this feels like. Is just by happenstance you had to take this on, and now it's like you freaking love it, and that's great.
That is hilarious, and that's an interesting picture to think about. But I was into it before it went down.
Okay.
I went to Bato because I was already into it.
Okay.
I went to Bato because I'm very addicted to this, not
Yeah.
for any reasonable purpose.
But I guess my other thing of my own example of this that I haven't really found more of, and maybe I'm not looking for it, is that like, because I've never really messed around with romance anime stuff. It's not really what I was looking for. And then Beastars happen, and I'm like, I need this. Whatever this is, I need more of this.
This makes sense to me because they're animals.
This makes sense. Because
That's your isekai.
That's my mix-in was furries, and then season 2 got really silly and dumb, and I still loved it. But it was like whatever was at the romance. I'm like, I was just like, I want more of this, but it needs this other mix-in, and this doesn't really exist a lot in this form.
These extreme feelings only make sense because someone could eat them at any time.
Well, and like
Dude, the mixing of the metaphors, and it's like, oh, and I was like, oh man, it's like it was great, but I get it. It's that's where I was doing that's what I kind of was getting at with that mixing thing. Is like there was another thing that is of my interest that brought me to this particular dance, and it was like, oh wait a minute, I actually love this other thing. But then it's like finding about, okay, what do I still need mixed into it for me to want to eat it? So now it's like, I would love to see another romance thing, but like, I don't know where to look now without looking for things that have these similar visuals or trappings.
And that's what I was kind of going to say when I said, like, for toxic masculine reasons, I never got more into it. And to go deeper into that, like, for me, Sailor Moon, the mix in there was Sailor Moon is a lot like Power Rangers. They transform and they each get a color and they got a power and everything. And I liked that, but nobody was ever going to recommend me something more on the romance side because I was a boy. Like, nobody necessarily told me I couldn't like Sailor Moon. I did have friends that told me I couldn't like Sailor Moon. But
nobody could tell me, but they did.
They did, but I don't really care about that so much. But it's not like I was going... There wasn't like a huge community of that stuff that I had any access to. I feel like maybe girls in my class traded comics or something that like
Archie comics.
It does make me wonder how my son is going to grow up because, first of all, we homeschool him. He doesn't go out and interact with very many other boys his age. So especially not like regular boys his age who would have those kind of ideas. On top of the fact, I don't hide the manga and manhwa that I read from him. Now, obviously, some of them I have to like close when he comes in the room. But like, I don't hide that I'm doing that. I don't hide that I'm reading romance manhwa or anything like that. So I feel like he'll have a significantly different idea of just the way that masculine and feminine sort of mix together than we would have grown
Oh,
up.
for sure. And this is one area where like algorithms don't care. They're not going to judge. They just want to feed you more what you want to read. So you'll get recommended other similar things these days. But back in the day, that was not the case.
Couldn't always find it. There wasn't something you could just ask.
Well, and there was also like, I was aware that people might have made fun of me for being into it. I will say that also prevented me from talking about it as much as I might have otherwise.
Ben, who's your favorite character in Sailor Moon? I forget his name, the mask one.
Tuxedo Mask.
Tuxedo
Because
Mask.
he's a boy.
That's the only,
halfway
of
there,
course.
Brad.
This is the only one.
Tuxedo Kamen.
No.
My work here is done. You didn't do anything.
Exactly.
No, I remember like getting into it with somebody who was like, Ben, you should watch Charmed. And I was like, I've seen a couple episodes. It's not very good. And they were like, oh yeah, well, I don't know. I really like Paige is my favorite character. And I was like, okay, Paige is the reason that Alyssa Milano and Cole did not work out. And she ruined it. And I was like, I might have watched more than one episode of Charmed.
Yeah.
I've definitely been like self-conscious of all this. But I
feel
don't
like
care
this
anymore.
this is a lead up to an entire episode about shipping that I don't think we're equipped for.
I've gotten more into that. Is one thing I care a lot more about these days. Since I've started reading these stupid romance.
Certain shows, it'll click in more of like, okay, yes, these two together. Okay, no, definitely not these two. Oh no, in this form, and
In
like,
fact, our last episode of Heroin Addiction that we just recorded, we were literally going over this, going, she can't be with any of these men. They're all terrible
they're
in
all-
different
they're
ways.
all bad
romance
for
because
her
I feel
girl.
like we don't. Anime I'm usually watching, I don't get that because if there is any romance, it's usually not
No,
good.
I'll tell you what I was
But
like.
like other stuff that I like, freaking Owl House and stuff, where I'm just like, yes, I'm very invested in this relationship.
I like had to force a smile off my face lest someone think I were less than entirely heterosexual when in My Hero Academia I wish I remembered their names, but the lightning guy was like, I'm gonna do this for the earlobe girl, and they're like, what do you want to protect? And he thought back and it was her, not just his friends, but her specifically, and I was like, I knew it. That's cute.
That one's cute. That one's got the added little benefit of like their powers are like kind of they work together a little bit, like an earphone jack, even though her she doesn't really have electric, but like it just kind of it clicked.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I
it's
care.
fun to put like things together and go, you guys, here you go.
I care more about that.
Kissy.
I will be disappointed if the series ends without telling me if they made it or not. like as a couple.
I care about that relationship way more than I do Deku and
Yeah, anything else in the
Soraka.
series?
Deku
cares?
and Ochako
He's
are
ace.
like,
Who cares?
eh.
That one's too
that's what I love
obvious.
about
Like
One
they set it up
Piece.
right away. It's like, oh, of course, that's okay. That's the normal one.
That's the thing I adore about One Piece. There is like zero shipping amongst the crew. It's like nobody's getting with anyone. Nobody
Sanji.
cares.
Sanji with everyone.
Sanji's getting nothing. That's what Sanji's getting. But yeah. I think the answer is all of us love romance stuff and we want more of it.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm grappling with like, what is it? what is the thing? Because I enjoy
humans,
it.
romance
I definitely
freaking-
enjoy it.
it's
We're
great.
we're literally doing a whole series.
I think it might just be a part of the human experience that everyone wants to have, but we're all very like,
Yeah.
we've got a lot of hang-ups about it.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to talk
dude.
about
Yeah.
I don't think that's it for
I
me.
think that's
though.
it, Brad. I think
Because
Brad, I think there are parts of you that you have not tapped into yet.
I mean,
and you're too
maybe.
scared to, but you don't know about it, so you're not
I've-
scared. You're just not. There's
I've-
just a wall that you can't see.
I've always been pretty open, and I don't think I've ever shied away from talking about sort of deeply personal feelings and stuff like that. And
I don't
so-
think you're being closed off or anything, but I do
No.
think there is like just watching people, get together and bond in that way. It's a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Like we do all like those close relationships.
We love love.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're lying or keeping things away.
No.
I think you're just haven't
But
fully explored your own head.
Yeah, I think
I'm not saying I haven't my freaking self explored out anyways. This is not in way any throwing shade. I think it's just like I think you just haven't discovered your entire self.
I think a lot of times, I think I can be fairly introspective, and I a lot of times I try to be introspective to like be a better person and all that kind of stuff. So when I think about this and I go, okay, where did this come from? What part of me is this coming from? Like what? And not being able to find that answer, whereas almost everything else about me that I can think of, I can go, oh, this is like how we talked about why I got into Isekai in the first place. Like I have a very clear notion of why that became something that I latched onto. But with the romance stuff, I can't find the seed. What was the nucleation point of that?
That's your journey. That's the thing you're going to dive into and find out. That's your question that you want answered.
I
wanted to know what Japan was doing with their fight with Russia. You want to understand why you like romance stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing.
Yeah, you want your big girl comics? I'm doing my manly history stuff. No, but I do kind of understand what you mean. I do understand what you mean because like there is something about each romance thing where it builds tension and then it will eventually, if it's good, relieve it by having a satisfying conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And that is most stories. If you break them down to like their most basic components, you build tension, you relieve it.
Will they? Won't they?
Yeah. And then for romance though, it is hard to pinpoint exactly at what point, why do I care about this character? Why do I care if they have a good relationship? And I think it's something like to have a good romance, you need to have a main character you identify with, who you can root for their happiness.
Which is weird because I don't identify with Korean women really.
But I think on some human level you do. Like you can identify with them well enough to know what would make them happy and sad.
You want happiness for people.
And you can
it's the joy of Spy Family of like wanting the two main characters to like actually become a family.
My empathy got overloaded.
Yeah. But I think it's the same thing with Spy Family because Spy Family isn't necessarily a romance.
I don't have...
In fact, it's basically not at all.
No, but
those moments when you see them come together and like, oh my gosh, are they going to kiss finally? Like those are exciting. It's that again. It's the potential. It's like, oh my gosh, they'd be so perfect for like this is really cute and adorable, and you want to see them actually get together and them having a little couple moments. It's like, it's so heartwarming. It just feels good.
Yeah, and it's not even like you want them to get together for like romantic or sexual reasons. You want them to get together to be a complete family. Like if Lloyd and Yor admit their feelings for her, then Anya has her mom and dad, and it completes.
Everybody's having a great time.
Yeah. This just popped into my head. There's also an aspect of this, which is watching a train wreck.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking of a specific series, but like there's a couple different series, and honestly, Villains Are Destined to Die, which was our last Heroin Addiction episode, sort of has this where it's like the drama is dark and like you don't know if something good is going to happen, and there isn't that like they're in love kind of thing. And so while you have the romance aspect of it, that's not sort of the main point.
It did tickle the same like dopamine nerve when she would tell somebody off who really had it coming.
Yeah.
And you could see them like absorb it and be like wounded by it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, get him.
But there's this one series, this one manhwa that I continue to read, even though it is objectively terrible.
More than one.
Well, the one that I'm thinking of is probably the worst. And what's part of the fun of it is that in the comments section, everybody agrees that it's terrible, and we're all only there just so we can get to the end because we need to see the comeuppance of the main antagonist.
My God, if that isn't like every good webcomic ever.
But as we're going on this journey through this series, the main character, the female lead, is just the worst. She's got no sort of
presence, charisma.
What's the word I'm looking for? Like her ability to
Being
do
empathetic.
anything.
Or competence.
Agency.
She's got no agency to her. Thanks, Ben. And like she's constantly relying on the 3 or 4 men around her that can actually do anything, and she's literally just like along for the ride. And so in the beginning of the series, you were like, oh, you feel sorry for her because this saintess person tricked the prince to get their engagement annulled, and she's being terrible and treating her horribly, and she tried to kill her, and so you're getting through this, and you're like, oh yeah, we need to get to the end of this series so we can see the saintess beheaded because she's such a bitch. But then it goes into this sort of second arc where she's literally just getting dragged around by these men, which they need to do because she has to do things that are good for her territory, but she is so incompetent and that word, no agency,
She's such
and
a
you're just like,
passenger.
Get
you're
in
just
the
like,
robot princess.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
it's just like, and it's like, this is terrible. Like I would, this is like a 2 out of 10 for me, and going under a 5 for me is a big deal.
Your ability to hate read is
And
an incredible skill that
but that's the thing is that I'm still reading it, and there's something about it, and it
have
might
to
just be
know.
because it's so trashy.
Yeah.
just gotta know.
You ever read, there was a webcomic way back in the day called Dominic Deegan, Oracle for Hire.
What for hire?
Oracle.
Oracle for hire.
And
I don't think I've read that, but that sounds familiar.
it was in a lot of the web rings when those existed. I read that, and it was for similar reasons. Like, it was not good. I mean, it was not well drawn at all, and it was not particularly well written, but like somehow this dude managed to make a living writing it. And I say somehow, but it's like I was there. I was reading it every week, and it was like that. It was just like this high drama, like terrible art, borderline nonsensical story, and there was just something, this je ne sais quoi that kept me going. Like I somehow attached to those characters, and I was like, I just gotta know where it goes.
Well, I should point out, because as we've talked about before, there are a lot of series that I read that are just objectively bad, but there is something about them that is still interesting to me, so I continue to read them. This is the one series that actually pisses me off. And
You literally hate
still
reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
After every chapter, I'm just like, how dare you?
honestly, yes. After every chapter, we all go down in the comment section and we go, Connie is such an idiot. How is she still alive? What is she doing? Why are these men still around her? She can't do anything. Why do they like her? This doesn't make any sense. Don't read it. I'm not going to tell you what the name of it is, because it's literally like I don't want to give it more attention.
I want it to fail, but I need to know.
It needs to live.
The faster it
And
fails,
infamy.
the faster they'll just wrap it up and be like, okay, Saintess beheaded and we're good. We're done. And then we'll all be like, oh, finally.
Feels weird to call a villain a saintess.
Well, I mean, in the original novel, she was the Saintess and she has the power. And except when she gets isekai'd into the world, she's like, I'm the Saintess, so I'm the main character. Everybody should love me, and I'm going to have sex with all these different men, and I'm going to seduce the prince. And yeah, she's awful.
It's just
The
worst.
only
coochie
person
energy.
worse in this series than the main character. Yeah.
You got it out. You feel better.
Well,
that was the
I
sigh.
I
of
don't
a
have
weight.
an answer yet.
That was a sigh
But-
of a weight taken off of shoulders, even if only a little bit.
Yeah. So I wonder if anybody listening to us right now has something that's completely counterintuitive to their personality that they got really into.
Drag also. Got really into drag shows.
You know, I keep seeing you tweeting about that.
I
and I'm
love
like, where's this
horror
coming
drag.
from?
I love the Boulet Brothers Dragula. I don't know why. This kind of has this is
Nothing to do
getting
with anything.
further and further from anime.
Yeah.
But I love the Boulay Brothers Dragula. I'm super into it. I have very strong opinions. I had this moment where I knew nothing about drag before I started watching the show, and I have watched so much of it that somebody came out impersonating somebody else, and I was like, I know that wig, and I shouted it so loud. My neighbors probably heard it, and I was like, what a baller move that was. Like, that wig.
What a flex.
Yeah, no, and I'm sitting there, and my wife was just staring at me. She's like, you've come a long way. I like, that wig with those shoes, what a baller move.
So, I haven't noticed any trucks hanging around recently. I think after my brush with death, I don't know. They're not here anymore. But I think we should probably check the mailbag. We haven't done that in a couple of weeks.
Oh, geez. Oh, man. I actually forgot about this. We got a letter, but it was really different, and it arrived differently.
Different how?
So normally it shows up in like an envelope like outside my front door. So not quite how I get my mail, but like normal enough.
Normal for trucks on letters.
I mean, normal for. I mean, I technically have gotten letters at my door before, but it is very rare. I have a mailbox those go to, but it was still like within a realm of possibility of like normalcy.
And so this came in a different way?
This one just appeared in my fridge next to like a bottle of marinara sauce that I had.
So you open your fridge to get a drink and there's just a piece of paper in there?
There's just a piece of paper. And not like any piece of paper. It's not like the normal paper I get, which is very just standard stationery paper, like it's freaking printer paper. This was like kind of like a medieval scroll almost, like
vellum
like,
animal skin.
Yeah, it was like papyrus or something. Like I don't know. I'm not a master of like old writing things, but it was very clearly like not normal. So besides me just being like, what the heck is this in my fridge when I'm trying to grab a drink? It's just this weird old thing.
Nani kore?
And all that's written on it in like clearly it's been written by like an old like pen, like a feather quill.
Right.
But whoever wrote it's like handwriting isn't very good. So it's kind of blotched up a bunch. And it just said Truxon lives again.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? Like I think we didn't hear from him last week, and I guess we thought he was related to that incident you had.
Guys, when I almost got hit by that truck, the truck that was coming right for me got hit by another truck.
I think that was Truxon.
Did Truxon get Truxoned?
I think he's on the run.
Huh. I probably should have looked through the wreckage. But I was not going to hang around there.
No, and I mean, from what we talked about, it got cleared up pretty quickly, so...
That's weird.
I probably should have checked for
And
survivors.
I crawled through the twisted part of the wreckage.
Honestly.
No, I don't blame you for just wanting to get out of there. No, but I think Truxan's out there.
Well, I guess
wherever
I mean
he is, I really hope Truxan. I have no idea if you've been isekai'd how you will hear us. I hope we can shout through the ether enough that you somehow can hear us.
Yeah, I guess we have to take it as face value.
Speak directly into the marinara.
Please. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's his Italian heritage. I think that's why he zeroed in. I think he has the ability through his truck to like send things, but I think he might be stuck there. I don't know. So maybe I just need to like go. We'll play the podcast.
Draw an upside down pentagram with marinara.
I'll draw a pizza. I'll draw a pentagram on a pizza.
Yeah.
And we'll play the podcast into that, and he'll be able to hear it.
I hope he can. I mean, if it's from him, I hope he can give us some more information.
Yeah. So Truxan, when you're able to hear this, however the heck that's going to happen, please send us another more complete letter about what your situation is. We're very curious, but even more than that, we're worried about you, especially after recent events. We want to know you're okay.
Yeah.
Please let us know then, whatever's going on, and we'll help at least try to keep you entertained while we wait. Oh man, I'm worried about that guy.
Guys, you know what time it is?
One punch!
Well, I was thinking more about manga book club, but okay.
Oh, getting ahead of myself. Manga book club!
That works. Well, in case you were wondering what we were going to talk about today,
ID'd.
If you don't actually read the titles of the podcast episodes,
Or don't know what that intro theme was that I poorly mangled.
yeah, today we're talking about One Punch Man, which is something that's been going on for a while. There's been 2 seasons of anime, and we've yet to talk about it.
There's been how many volumes of the manga?
A lot.
Okay.
I
At
don't.
least double digits?
I probably should have looked. I didn't.
Okay, because you're the one reading it. And
Yeah.
to be clear, in this particular manga book club, we've collectively seen the first 2 seasons, but Brad is the only one who's reading it.
Yeah. So I think the point that we're at in the manga right now is just we've sort of just gotten to the end of an arc, and I believe season 3, which we talked about, just got announced, is going to be covering that arc. So I guess to give a little bit of a background here, One Punch Man is I think the best way to describe it is a satire of superheroes.
It becomes that. I would say it starts about as a satire of shonen action heroes and also an allegory. I don't even know if it's an allegory, a story of depression.
Yeah, there's
Very,
definitely that.
very
yeah,
clearly.
yeah. The undertones. And actually, not even
Tones.
undertones, just regular tones. Of,
Just regular tones.
Yeah, depression in there.
It's similar to Mob, which we have recommended, and it's by the same person.
Yeah.
And he seems to have a recurring theme in his work of overpowered characters whose power does not bring them any happiness.
Right. And so, as opposed to Mob, which we talked about last week, was it?
Last episode.
Yeah, last episode.
What
right.
is time?
Where Mob is like doesn't want to use his powers and is sometimes scared of them and everything. Our protagonist in One Punch Man, Saitama, has become what you could describe as infinitely powerful and is okay with that to a degree until he finds that he can't actually have a good fight with, the monsters or
Which is all he wants.
Right.
Because he defeats everything in
he
one punch. One punch! Yeah.
yeah, he became that powerful because he was constantly seeking out, that adrenaline rush that he got from the first time he fought a monster when he wasn't super powerful. And he kept building up and building up until he sort of broke his limit and became One Punch Man, where he's basically unable to be harmed. He can destroy everything in one punch.
Barely trying.
Yeah.
And his life lacks direction now.
Right. So it's sort of it's an interesting allegory, I think, maybe for becoming a billionaire.
To quote my favorite philosopher, Chainsaw Man, what
Boobs.
if I find that everything I want is garbage and I was actually more happier during the chase than when I caught it?
Yep. Yeah.
And that's One Punch Man.
Yeah.
He liked the struggle. He liked the training. He liked the fighting. And now
He's at the top.
unable of finding a meaningful challenge. And this is played as humorous because any other anime protagonist would be thrilled to bits.
I'd say humorous, but all like in a kind of almost dark comedy.
Yeah, it's dark comedy.
It's a little dark.
I'm afraid this is going to just grind everything to a halt here, but I have to get this out because it just entered my mind based on what you said, Ben. So just to give a little bit of a pretext, season 2 of One Punch Man, not very good. The anime,
are we?
I'm sort of skipping a bit here because I need to get this out. the animation team that did season 2, they sort of just made the manga live action, which sometimes is okay. But the first season of One Punch Man is really dynamic and really well animated.
Yeah,
Arguably
gorgeous.
carried by its visuals.
Right.
Yeah.
But also the
I think
story
a
of it
strong
is really
start
good.
carried by its visuals. Yeah.
In the second season and further on in the manga, the thing that I've been saying for a little while now, we've been talking about this, is that they sort of lost the plot. They sort of just go heavy into, hey, look at all these superheroes and the cool stuff that they're doing,
none
and
of them are that cool 'cause
monsters.
They're all
and,
very
right.
generically made.
And so I've sort of been
They're gag
complaining
characters, but
about
they're not funny.
Yeah, I've sort of been complaining about this for a while because it feels like one sort of just gave up and was like, I'm just going to write a superhero manga now. That's what I'm going to do, instead of this funny and deep satire that he was writing before. But what you just said, Ben, what if the journey was the thing and it wasn't getting what you wanted? And now I'm wondering if the fact that it sort of just turned into a standard shonen superhero thing is the point.
Now I can be as dissatisfied as Saitama.
Right.
That's not very funny.
It's not. But would that not be the ultimate form of satire?
Hey, Brad, I'm 16 and this is deep.
I was going to say,
getting paid.
this is how you get your anime PhD here. This is a thesis.
What if what if the act of reading One Punch Man is like the act of being One Punch Man?
No, and that's exactly it. Because as you're saying that, what if it was the journey?
I keep punching this comic, hoping it's gonna
every
be good.
moment leads up to from when we watched season 2 was, where is Saitama? I want
Right.
to go spend time with Saitama, and then he can punch the guy who's causing all these problems, and then we can be done with it.
I'll put it this way.
But you can't.
I love that interpretation. I do not think one is that deep.
I mean, you look at Mob though, and you go,
I think
he's capable of it.
I don't think double-digit volumes of we're faffing about when it's not like the first couple of episodes aren't whatever you're describing.
Hypothetically, what if what happened was that he was writing this and it started to become really popular and he got these editors or producers or whatever that came and said, hey, this is great, but we need more of these other superheroes because that's what sells and everything. And he went, you know what? All right, you're going to get what you want.
No, that's not. I don't think that's.
I could see
as
that.
much as this man that I've never met, that I don't know what he sounds like or looks like or heard a word he's actually spoken. At least of what I know through watching Mob.
No, and that's it.
He seems like he has a bigger heart than that.
I don't.
Than that
but
kind
if
of
it,
very meta
Mob is the thing.
Sneering thing.
If it wasn't for
Mob,
Mob, if it wasn't for watching Mob and going, this is excellent on so many different levels, I wouldn't think that would be something he would be capable
We
of.
also still don't know how much he does with the anime than the manga because none of us have read Mob's manga.
Well, and I was going to say, we don't know how involved in any of this one even is anymore.
He doesn't draw it anymore.
Well,
the artist who drew Ice Shield 21 draws it.
The webcomic that he does.
I love it.
The webcomic that he does completely on his own, that then Murata takes and adapts to something that gets published in volumes and stuff.
Is he still drawing One Punch Man, though?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there are certain divergences, things that are different, but for the most part, it's very similar.
I can't imagine one who can't draw. I mean, I'm going to be honest about that. I can't imagine he's doing like super long fight scenes that we see in some of the. Like, it cannot be as action packed.
I don't actively read the webcomic, so I can't say for certain. But I think there's a lot of stuff in there.
I guess, but I don't know. I mean, they wouldn't have a completely different guy drawing the manga if the webcomic was serviceable.
Brad, this feels like justification of reading a thing that isn't very good.
I am not trying to justify it. I'm going to read it.
I know you won't, because I know you read a lot of things
anyway.
that you do not go out on a limb to justify, because you just do your thing, and I respect that about you.
There's enough interesting things in there that I'm going to keep reading it anyway. But it just, as soon as Ben said that, it just jumped in my head, and I was like, what if the comic itself is an allegory for itself?
I love that interpretation. you are invited to the douche philosophy corner. But I think I told you guys this, offline last week at our just watching anime club. I think in a world where My Hero Academia didn't exist, One Punch Man would be doing very well, and a lot more resources would be allocated to it. And,
the
there's definitely a lot.
Whatever the heck it's called, the Super Society thing gets a lot of wind taken out of its sails if you're already taking in My Hero Academia, which was built to do that, and it's just doing it infinitely better and with more purpose, and it doesn't just feel like here's some structure or bureaucracy, here's the A heroes, here's the B hero, here's the C heroes, here's a bunch of people who run behind the scenes of all these things, here are the monsters they fight, and it just feels so structurally rote. And Saitama just kind of F's his way through it in a way that's not that important.
Saitama would kick All Might's ass.
Well, of course, because he's One Punch Man. But there is this factor to One Punch Man where I think what My Hero Academia takes seriously, One Punch Man finds ridiculous, and that is the joke. But unfortunately, in a world where My Hero Academia is successful, the joke fails. And by that I mean the idea of a superhero bureaucracy is on its face stupid. But in My Hero Academia... Go
back and listen to our My Hero Academia episode.
Oh.
In My Hero Academia, we've accepted it.
Yeah.
Like, they've made it normal. They normalized it. And in One Punch Man, it's no longer ridiculous. It's just a straightforward thing.
It's too much of just a thing.
Yeah.
Because in My Hero, you feel its impact in society, and in One Punch Man, where entire cities get blown up on the regular, it just feels like you're in a tiny little, like, shonen anime clockwork town. And nothing really matters.
Not to completely spoil season 3, but the arc is called the Monster Association arc.
Right.
And so what you get is... here's the Hero Association, who's built up 5 different levels of heroes from F to S or whatever.
Oh, they added more.
Maybe it starts at C, but anyway. And then you have to go. Oh, there's more and more monsters all the time. Oh, guess what? It's because they're working together now. They have a Monster Association, and what happens?
My Hero did it.
Is
the Villain Society.
A huge group of heroes goes to clear out the huge group of monsters, and for 40 chapters you just get all these heroes fighting all these monsters, and Saitama is just sort of there sometimes.
And
you go, what are we doing here?
Do either of you know or remember a webcomic called Axe Cop?
Yes.
Us watching it and you describing where One Punch
cartoon.
Man reminds me of Axe Cop, which is a story, I think, told by an 8-year-old and drawn by his 20 to 30-year-old older brother, because their family is weird. And it's got the way you just described the Monster Association, Brad, sounds like a kid describing playing with their toys. And then he went and did this, and then they had a big fight, and then these guys showed up. Oh, but the monsters worked. It feels very point to point.
Well,
and then they bang the toys together.
It feels like,
which is, I guess, what Dragon Ball is somebody reading Dragon Ball, but at least it feels like there's a little bit more going on with that. And this feels very much and then Saitama showed up when he punched the thing. It just doesn't sound it just sounds like very seat of the pants, but not in a fun way.
So to me, it feels like My Hero Academia, but worse, because in My Hero Academia, you have the hero organization and all this stuff. And the problem with the hero organization, for me, I don't like superheroes, would be it's full of hypocrisy. It's full of people making money off of what is supposed to be a purely altruistic endeavor. And there's a ton of problems with that. It's very cynical. I find the idea of a hero organization very cynical. And in One Punch Man, I think that's intentional. I think one finds things like that cynical based on his work with Mob and Regan and paid for psychics and stuff. But what My Hero does is it takes it to kind of its logical conclusion. The corruption of the system breeds more intense supervillains, and eventually we have to re-examine through Deku what a hero is and should be. Deku would be there whether he got paid or not. That's the whole point of Deku. That's why he gets one for all. instead of somebody like
Spoilers.
Bakugo who's not ready for it. But that's what like My Hero Academia is all about. What is a hero? And One Punch Man was kind of all about where do you get meaning in your life if you're a shonen protagonist who peaks.
Who peaks at the start.
Yeah. And that's the joke. And then that joke ran its course. And
now we're just here.
It hasn't grown. And I think maybe in like the webcomic, which I assume is much older than either the comic or the anime, having these, there's a hero organization and then there's an equally bureaucratic villain organization and they tear themselves off. And One Punch Man is supposed to be a comedy. Like at the end of the day, right? So I keep looking for the joke. And I think the joke is they're just these straightforward bureaucracies. It's like, what if salarymen were superheroes? But
I think that's a couple number of years too late Shonen Jump pilot.
But it just doesn't get there. And
like
then,
a part-time hero, if he comes out of the office and then he ties his tie around his head and then he goes and he fights
when that's literally
crime around the neighborhood and it's like a comedy and then it escalates from there.
That's literally who One Punch Man was. That's who Saitama was. He was a salaryman.
But you don't see that journey. It's like that whole thing with the chase. It's like you get the chase in a quick flashback in the beginning and then you just kind of deal with the depression of the now.
But
and it's like you said, it's like we kind of went through the initial theme that we were doing and now we're just kind of here doing
what Mob
whatever.
What Mob did right is Mob like feels lived in. Eventually, it's characters who start out as like dumb caricatures of people you know, like the burnout who starts a telepathy club. Mob takes 3 seasons to get to the point where she's graduating and she's crying in the woods because she just wanted to make some memories with her friends. And like by that point, I'm invested in her and I care and we can go on this little tangent. But if they'd done that right off the bat, I would have been like, what the fuck is this?
Time is moving.
And that's kind of what One Punch Man is. It's like Saitama is an outsider to this whole system. He's barely even aware of its existence because he's been training so hard. He comes into it and then he's like, and then all of a sudden there's 50,000 characters that I don't know or care about and they're fighting. And their fights don't mean anything to me. I don't know what the stakes are. I don't know this person.
And his place.
And the stakes are always, Saitama will show up if there's a real problem and he'll punch the guy and then it's over. But it's not like we're not really having any big, either funny or philosophical moments in between to make that weight feel like anything.
It doesn't have Mob's heart.
Right? Yeah.
But the thing, like Saitama's place in everything that's going on is always the foil of. He is so apathetic to everything at this point that when he saves the day, it's almost always by accident.
But does he change at all, or is he still just the same mope playing video games with King up as an apartment while the world falls apart?
He doesn't really change once he reaches that peak.
Which is right at the start, which means he's a static character.
And that's not necessarily a problem. He
differ.
He is more a set piece with which to tell the story on rather than a character in and of himself.
Right.
Then I need someone else who's growing and changing.
That's
the weird
supposed
robot
to be.
Man,
that's
who also feels like big ass cop vibes of like he's a robot guy and he gets stronger when he goes to his village and they build him stronger this time. Like it's a kid watching DBZ or My Hero and then making crappy versions of the stories.
I would say the point isn't about character growth or anything like that. And I to this extent, I think it probably doesn't need to still be going on. I think it's overstayed its welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my biggest point of all this. This should have ended ages ago.
Right. It's 1 or 2 seasons of an anime that is specifically the satire of superhero organizations. Like you go, wait, they're putting this infinitely powerful person in C rank because he failed the written test or whatever, even though he broke every single physical record there is by tons. It's like, this is ridiculous.
There's so many jokes there that you could make that he's not making.
I also think that it's not. I mean, of my personal viewing of season 1 of One Punch Man, I think it stops being good once the Hero Society shows up.
Yeah.
I think that the things that when it is strongest in its themes about depression and anxiety and dealing with not anxiety. I think that's just a thing you say when you say depression a lot. Sorry. Like, that is when it's at its most powerful and meaningful and interesting and fun. And as soon as the Hero Society shows up, it's like, I'm done. I'm not interested anymore.
So
I need another term than jump the shark, but maybe that's what I want here, which is you've changed into something else that I'm not interested in anymore.
He one-punched the shark.
There you go. Doesn't he actually fight a shark creature pretty early?
Yeah.
There's a lot of sea creatures, so I'm assuming there's a shark.
But
yeah.
The thing is, with the Hero Association, the joke should have been, okay, One Punch Man doesn't have the seniority required to be an A-rank superhero, so he's got to put in his time, even though he's super qualified, because that was a famous thing in Japan, is that seniority matters more than competency. And they've backpedaled on that, but it still exists. There's a joke there. There is another joke in that Genos, he trains really hard under his senpai, and he gets really good, and then he just gets blown up, and One Punch Man knocks it out of the park. And they kind of do that, but then you're supposed to take Genos seriously.
But it also doesn't matter because he's a robot. No matter how much he trains,
Yeah.
his mechanical form has a limit that can only be increased by someone.
Right. His growth is always from the doctor who
His growth
builds
is
him.
literally mechanical.
His growth is an update.
He literally cannot train in a that meaningful way.
And so I don't like Genos. This is going to be an unpopular opinion. I think Genos is a big reason One Punch Man doesn't work.
Agreed.
And I know that's the fans love it.
Well, so
he's funny as a foil.
I should probably
it's just like, okay, I'm gonna do a thing that I shouldn't. Do you think One Punch Man is still popular with normie anime fans?
No,
Which just using the term normie also is already a place that I shouldn't be coming from. Because that's
If
not a
you
good place
said
to be
if you
coming
said
from,
does it
but
still have mainstream popularity?
I don't even know if I'd say mainstream. Like, I guess mainstream via anime fan.
Yeah.
Not mainstream to like the world.
I don't
Amongst
think so.
people who watch more than a couple anime regularly, I'd say no.
Anime people we do not confer with
Anime
or feel kinship with.
One Punch Man was everywhere. It was on the level of My Hero Academia. I heard for a while there more about One Punch Man than I heard about My Hero Academia.
Same.
And it just fell off the face of the earth.
Well, that's the thing.
It played its joke, and then its joke was done, and then we moved on. Thankfully,
I can't really stress enough that people should probably watch season 1 of One Punch Man and then stop.
Yeah, watch like the first 6 or 7 episodes, and then when the Hero Society shows up, stop.
Because honestly, the first season is really good, and you
Agreed.
culminate with this battle against somebody who is super powerful. The super powerful alien comes down, and Saitama has a battle with him, and it's ridiculous because, and that's the point, because at the end, the alien is just like completely obliterated, and while Saitama was like, "You were the strongest person I've ever fought," I didn't sustain any damage, but that was close to fun.
Should One Punch Man have been a movie? Could it have
maybe.
done? I think it could have done exactly what it needed with a beginning, middle, and end with a movie, and then it would have just been done. I was going to say an OVA. I think it needs a little bit more than like an hour and change. Give me an hour 45. Yeah. I think you could tell that story meaningfully and be done with it.
Probably
less is more with One Punch Man.
Yep.
But I'm gonna say, so we're all agreed. One Punch Man sucks. Why are we talking about it?
Because it doesn't suck.
Okay.
Because the first arc, the first season, does not suck. It is good. It is a good satire.
It's worth.
It is entertaining.
It is worth your time. It is visually.
It's visually
stunning.
amazing.
It's got a little bit of the mob energy because this was before mob, at least anime wise, where it does have that kind of emotion and that kind of dark moroseness of dealing with depression in a way that you can feel with Saitama, and like, why am I getting out of bed in the morning and what am I doing with my life in a way that felt very visceral. And yeah, like I said, that's why I don't like the Hero Society, because when they show up, all of that is just diluted so much as to not even be there anymore.
So here's the thing.
Otherwise, when you're leading up to that, 100% worth it. If you've never seen it before, those first couple episodes, worth your time.
I am still reading it, and I am going to watch season 3 because
we are not going to. You are going to watch it.
Yeah. I'm still interested in what Saitama is doing and how that plays out. To be fair, all of the fights are visually appealing. As bad as I think the story has become, it is still entertaining to look at the flashing lights moving around. So there's still a morsel there that you're like, oh, remember that amazing Thanksgiving dinner we had? Here's some leftovers that have been around for a week and a half, but it's still edible.
Man who licks bones will continue to eat anything.
Yeah. So that's me. I can't really recommend beyond season 1 to really anybody.
Do you think you might be surprised by season 3?
Here's what I think is going to happen.
Report back to us about if season 3 is an improvement over season 2 in a meaningful way outside of just the animation.
No, but that's exactly
That's
it.
what I guess what I'm
What is going to
curious
happen is, because I can tell you this, because the story of season 2 is still sort of hanging on to the vestiges of what made season 1 interesting story-wise, but they completely flubbed the actual execution as far as like the animation. And that really ruined it. Now, for season 3, they lost the plot. The manga, the arc that's going on is just like, what the heck are we doing? This doesn't make any sense. However, being done by Mappa, we decided it was Mappa, right? It is probably going to look amazing.
Okay.
And I think that is going to be the draw for anybody
Well, that could
who's
be
still
more. Also,
looking
some of
at
that can go into directing, because usually
Yeah.
when the animation, not that animation quality is always indicative of the direction quality or the production quality, it helps, and I think that's part of what made season 2 not good, because the animation quality went below. Like season 1 was immaculate, so
Right.
it's anything less than was always not going to be good, and it was not great. And I think it's like you said, it was mostly just we're doing the manga. There's no strong directorial hand at the till going, hey, here's what the vibe we're going on, and this is what we want to communicate. And like, it was just like, well, here it is. It just kind of served it up. There was no, director's eye, it felt
Right.
like.
So
So maybe it'll be back more on track with season 3 if it gets somebody who's got a stronger vision
yeah, my prediction
and time and money.
is that it'll be amazing looking. Hopefully the sound and all that, the music and everything is really good too. But then the story will just be like, eh. And, for a lot of people, I think that'll probably be fine. It's, to me, who got really into the first arc because of what it was doing with the satire, it's disappointing. But I'm still going to check it out, because it's not like it's taken up that much of my time. I'm still reasonably invested in it. But as I said, I can't go to other people, especially like you guys, and go, oh, you should probably check this out. It's pretty cool.
I don't think I could name 3 characters besides Saitama and Genos.
Saitama, Genos, not Kamen Rider, Moomin Rider. Moomin Rider rules.
I do remember him.
Well, and you
Moon
said
Rider's
one
the guy.
earlier. He plays video games with.
King.
Yeah.
I would never have remembered that guy's name.
I like that guy's bit.
Yeah.
I think that's why I remembered his name. He has a very simple name. I remember his bit.
Besides Saitama,
I want to say there's a
that is
guy
the
named
best.
the Atomic Samurai.
Yeah. Good.
There's all of the
I don't
Tank
know who
Top
that is.
brothers.
Are
They blood related?
there's
or are
some
they like
the
clan
top.
related?
I think the top 3 or 4 are brothers, and then everybody else is.
Is there a girl named Fuyumi?
Is that the girl, the tiny girl that I hate with the
Fubuki.
psychic powers?
Fubuki.
Yeah. No, the little one is Tatsumaki.
I hate that character, and I hate that I have to see her on the internet occasionally. It's fucking gross.
Those 2 are sisters. The smaller one is the older sister.
Because Japan.
Yeah.
Because Japan. Ugh.
Unconfirmed if she is wearing underwear.
Double extra ugh.
Wait, the lolly one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, God.
I know. I hate it.
Hey, she's like 35.
Oh, yeah.
Don't care,
Yeah.
Brad. I don't care if she's a 10,000-year-old dragon. She looks like a 6-year-old, which
Look.
means she's a 6-year-old in the
No,
way that
she
matters.
looks like a 14-year-old.
I've told anime fans.
What a puke.
Here's my ultimatum to anime fans. Here's how it is. They are either their canon age or they're the age they look like they are. And you don't want to go by canon age, because damn near every girl in anime is under 18.
Yeah. So I will say, the fact that she looks like that is part of the joke.
Yes.
Like it's not really to have a lolly.
I know,
It's-
but it is
but
because it's
yeah,
the
I
bit,
understand.
and it's not his fault, but it is. It's,
Yeah.
It's not his fault, but it is his responsibility.
yes, it's like your mental health. It's not his fault, but it is his responsibility. I love that. That's perfect, Ben.
Anyway,
Let's be done.
So to wrap that up,
Let's one punch
watch
this
season 1. And when season 3 comes out, I'll do a little news segment thing at some point and tell you if you should watch it or not.
to hear you reporting in on that.
Send me an anime music video of the best bits.
Send me an anime music video of the intro, which is hopefully not just the reheated leftovers from the first season that the second season's opening was.
You can use any song from Linkin Park's Reanimation album, and I will consume that.
But let us know what you think of One Punch Man, because even though our opinions are the best, we're not the only opinions.
Sure.
All right, that'll do it for episode 14. Woo! We did it. Coming to an end once again. We hope everybody enjoyed listening. I know that at least some people get this far. So we really appreciate all our listeners, and we really hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. I appreciate anybody that listens through the ending tag and hears the bloopers, because oh boy, do I love hearing my bloopers at the end.
I do wonder how many people actually hear the bloopers.
I don't usually get through. I mean, admittedly, we don't really have an ad read at the end that I have to get through, which I don't do with a lot of podcasts. So I just know that they're there, and I know that there's the juicy, dumb things that I said. So me being a little parakeet that likes to look at my audio reflection, I'm about it. But I think there's some pretty good stuff in there.
If you're a One Punch Man fan, 1v1 me in the comments. I'll be there.
To punch you.
If you want to let us know what you think about anything we talked about or just the podcast overall, you can check out our website, which is animepodcasterreincarnation.com. You can leave comments there on the episode posts. We also have posts up there for different reviews of different manga that we've been reading, as well as some other additional kind of content.
The 9-page Faraway Paladin comparative essay. Read it.
That at least 20 people have seen.
Is as interesting as it is needlessly long. Read it.
Okay.
I criticize the manga for having too much blank space in the panels, and I do that by photoshopping Dairy Queens into the background.
Okay, now I need to read this right now.
Okay, I will say,
great.
I am one of those visits, and I did read the entire thing, and it was genuinely interesting. I can recommend it for people to go and read. It's not so dense that you would go, am I really going to finish reading this? I was legitimately...
easy breezy.
It was a good read. There was good information. There were hardly any typos, and so yeah.
You can edit those. Yeah. If there's still typos, you should fix them. But yeah, do that. That's my plug.
And I'll tell you what, if you really like what we're doing, go out to Patreon, because we have a Patreon. It's Anime Podcaster Reincarnation on Patreon, and we currently don't have any tiers because we're waiting on all of our fans to tell us what they want out of tiers, because we want to give the people what they want.
Yeah. I assume it's lengthy comparative essays.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably access to a Discord to yell at us more specific, to not talk to us more specifically.
Yeah, I mean, and if that's what people want, we can definitely do that. But you got to let us know. So hit us up either on the website. You can just go on Patreon and throw us $1 or $2, and then you can let us know what you think there. Or you can contact us in some additional ways, such as on Twitter, while that's still around. I'm on Twitter at Isekai Sensei. Ben is on Twitter at Bento Baggins, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Bento Baggins.
And Kermit also has a Twitter that he never checks, at Kermit D. Grog.
Yep.
So
the will of D.
You can send something to him, or if you want him to actually read it, send it to me or Ben, and we'll make sure he sees it.
I will actually see it on Twitter. That's the joke.
And you know what? I know everyone has email, so if you don't have a Twitter and you don't want to support us on Patreon and you don't want to go out to our website, you can literally just email us, Isekai Sensei-Sama at gmail.com. I will probably read your email on the podcast if you do that.
You can also burn a message in the center of a pentagram drawn with marinara, lit by 6 black cannolis.
Send a less. Yeah, you two at home could send a letter to Truxan wherever he is. I miss him.
We're also on YouTube. The YouTube channel is That Time I Got Reincarnated as an Anime Podcaster. And we release the podcast on YouTube at the same time as all of the other podcast platforms, but the YouTube version is higher quality and in stereo. So that's fun. And we also now have a Facebook page.
Oh,
I set that up. There's, at the time of recording, there's only one post out there, which was the last episode that we did, but I will be putting all of the backlog out there. Interestingly enough, in the past 3 days, I've been getting alerts on Facebook that we've been getting views on the Facebook page. And I don't know why that is, but
Bots? I don't know.
some people are out there looking at it. So if you
I
found
don't
us
know
through
if it's
Facebook,
someone.
thank you. We appreciate you. Oh, and in case Twitter does die, you should get on Good Pods, because that'll be a good way to leave comments and stuff on the podcast episodes. You can actually do that on the desktop now.
I never would have predicted Good Pods might outlive Twitter, but here we are.
Here we are. What an existence.
So yeah, there's a phone app for that, but you can also just go out on the website and find the podcast episodes there and leave comments. We appreciate ratings, not only on Good Pods, but on any podcast
Such as
app that
Apple
you're
iTunes.
using.
That's a classic spot.
If you go out and you leave a rating, leave a review, or whatever it is, we really appreciate that. So that's it for all of the different ways you can contact us. But if you can't get enough of any of us, there's actually more. Ben, what else do you do?
A 9-page comparative essay on the Faraway Paladin. Also, I do a book podcast called Words About Books. You can find it wherever you find podcasts.
On Twitter.
On Twitter at WABpod. I don't know. Elon Musk stopped paying his rent. I don't even know if I should plug that anymore.
You're on Mastodon now too, right?
Okay, let's
about
not
Hive?
go quoting everything all the time, or where we can be found and never be talked to.
Oh, Kermit's falling asleep.
I'm
Is there anything you want to plug?
Be excited to hear my old podcast unearthed and remastered into the universe.
Oh yeah, I don't know if that's coming out before this episode or after.
We'll get excited for a bunch of old podcasts we did that I'm sitting back to now, really proud of.
Go listen to it if you haven't listened, or if you already listened to it, listen to it again.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've all changed.
In fact,
it's been a long year.
Go back and listen to the entire back catalog.
Listen to it while you sleep. We need the downloads.
Make sure you listen to it.
It's the prequel of this
listen,
podcast series.
Listen to it on a different podcast app, so we make sure we get the numbers up. So once again, that'll do it for this time, and thanks everybody for listening. So that'll do it for us today. And as always, remember, if you get reincarnated in another world, find something that interests you.
And World War IV will be fought with shiritori. Each syllable is going to go based on the syllable the other person's ended with, and then we're going to...
Oh, yeah, I've read that a couple times. And they always try and translate it to make sense in English, and it's like, I don't know what to do.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It's a game Japanese language learners play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's on a bunch of forums and stuff. It really tests your vocabulary.
I feel like that's people playing like the alphabet game in English, where it's like, I'm going to say a name that starts with the letter A, and then you have to do B, and then you go through the alphabet.
It's basically the same thing.
That's what I was thinking.
They do it with sounds, though, right?
Each syllable. So if I say, like, konnichiwa, then you have to say a word that starts with wa.
Right.
And
Watashi wa.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
I got beat you to it, bud.
That's the only
I was like,
word
wait
I
a minute,
know.
I know something on this. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take the ball.
Watashi wa Isekai Sensei-Sama desu.
Brad, I know you asked, but I have to go to the bathroom real quick. Sorry.
You son of a bitch. That butt sumo thing is something I've come across in a couple different series. And every time it comes up, I'm like, this isn't real, right? This is something they're making up. But then it keeps
your
coming
rabbit
up.
hole, Brad.
That's your rabbit hole.
You got to start Googling butt sumo.
Next year,
No.
here's your homework, Brian, for
No.
next time. You go down the rabbit hole.
No.
You got to report back about butt sumo.
No.
You
I
have
need
to
to
know.
know the cultural origins of
I
butt
need to know the
sumo.
cultural origins. I need to know if it's real or not.
Do they
No.
train in the mountains of Kyoto?
I
They
am
sit
Under
underneath a waterfall.
Ass up under a waterfall.
I am outright refusing this assignment.
Oh, coward.
Coward.
I have 106
Philistine.
chapter
Coward.
manga to read before.
Yes, and
next
you
month.
could read those. I know you'll read them. You could also look into
You got
the
2
stack. It
monitors.
won't take long. It'll take you an hour, Mr. Master of All.
Well,
Great professor.
maybe the listeners will point us in the right direction for that.
You dare call
Maybe our
yourself an
listeners will
academic.
chide you about it.
No, I do not. Well, I guess I do. Sensei. Yeah. Very specific. I have a PhD in Isekai, and that is it.
You could have another one.
I get my master's in butt sumo.
My associates in butt sumo. Let's be realistic here.
I
I
think you'd need more than a 2-year degree. Yeah.
If you wanna go
I wouldn't
pro,
know without looking
yeah.
into it, Brad. I love that I listen to the old Pop Culture Talk Zones where I'm the host, and Brad, you're having a rough week, so I'm just like, my hosting energy is back.
You're weak, old man.
What's the freaking line from Lion King? Is it just "Long live the king" or is it something else?
Long live the kings when
Is it just "Long live the king"?
Yeah.
I podcastingly auditorily kick you.
I don't know. Maybe I should have checked for survivors. Got me.
I know, and then I just started quoting other things, so it's.
I was just like, yeah, just imagining that actually happened, and you were just like put your hands in your pockets and start whistling as you walked away.
I mean, yeah, basically.
Leave things as you found it.
Wasn't my truck.
That's the title of the story.
Yeah.
Somehow, these episodes just keep getting longer and longer.
I don't know how, especially
what-
because we more increasingly go into them going, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm going
What
to
are we
talk
gonna
about.
talk
And then
about?
we talk about for hours. And
When you
it's
said
like,
that
okay.
was the end of the middle bit, I was like, the middle bit.
Oh crap! I didn't write an
I was going to say, I
outro.
hope you have an outro.
Oh, I'm gonna have to wing this.
God, I
Well,
don't
wiggity
trust
wham
that.
wham wazzle, guys. That's this time we got reincarnated in the same world as a something or other, and